Coming up next, Book TV presents Afterwards, an hour-long program where we invite guest hosts to interview authors. This week, former Marine Rifle Platoon Commander Karl Marlantes discusses his book, Matterhorn, about his experiences in combat during the Vietnam War. The Rhodes Scholar and Navy Cross recipient sets his story in 1969, detailing the exploits of Bravo Company as it tries to recapture a fire support base. He talks with author, military analyst, and former Army Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters.
Well, hello. It's my great privilege today to interview Karl Marlantes, author of the astonishingly good bestseller, which would make any writer jealous, Matterhorn, a novel of Vietnam. Matterhorn is not only superbly written, despite the fact that there are no vampires in this, no boy wizards, no shopaholic nymphomaniacs, just a very serious, wrenching, moving, and brilliantly executed novel about the Vietnam War. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list for 8 weeks, and deservedly so. Karl, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
So I've got to put you on the spot right away.
Good.
Beyond the flap copy that the publicists work with you on or cook up themselves, what's this really about? What is this wonderful novel about?
It's about a young man learning compassion in the middle of a war, which is a very difficult task, something that all young men have to learn at some point. But that's the essence of this novel.
Well, that certainly comes across, but the road to learning compassion is very, very brutal. In fact, it's not a road, it's a jungle trail.
Exactly, yeah.
And the characters in this are just remarkably well drawn. Obviously, there's one who's, although this is told in the third person, there's a ghost narrator, Second Lieutenant Wayno Mellis.
Correct, yeah.
Who's a well-educated Marine second lieutenant, a little bookish, sensitive, a little bit vain about his intellect at first, gets over it quickly.
Yeah, gets it knocked out of him.
Yeah, how much of Wayno Mellis is Karl Marlantes?
Well, you know, I like to tell people if I had half of this character's political skills, I'd probably, you know, be over in the Senate office building right now instead of being a writer. I'm not him that way at all. Yeah. I mean, he's an amalgam of some people I knew, one of whom was a marvelous kingmaker type of politician, and quite frankly, one was my older brother, who was a corporate leader and very good at it. But you know, a lot of the flaws in there are the ones that I had to go through. I mean, I was an intelligent. I was the valedictorian of my high school, you know, and then, so I was really smart. But man, it didn't do me any good in Vietnam at all. There was a lot of other things I had to learn, and so that part of the character is partly me too. And of course, he sees things that I saw, and most second lieutenants who are dropped into combat see.
Yeah, the learning curve is very, very steep.
It's steep where it ends quick.
Yeah, but that brings up a point about the writing itself. Usually only the worst novels have characters taken completely from life. Most characters in really good novels, and this is a really good novel, are amalgams. They're a little bit from your cousin, from your brother, from somebody you knew, right. Traits from somebody you ran into in a diner for half an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What about the dark hero of this book, Lieutenant Hawk, Ted Hawk, who is brilliantly done? How much of him came from anybody in particular?
Well, I had, when I first arrived, a company executive officer who was probably the best Marine officer I ever served under. And he served a great deal inspired a great deal of Hawk. Now, you know, a lot of Hawk is, like you said, made up from other people, but his name was Tim Rabbit, and he was just a Marine officer. He didn't stay in, he got out, but he led a company eventually at the end of his tour. So you don't, as a lieutenant, you don't get companies in the Marine Corps unless you're really good, and he was. And so, yeah, he inspired that character quite a bit.
Yeah, of course, this novel is set in the later phases of the Vietnam War,
right,
when the home front has really soured. And we can get to that a bit more later on. Yet Wayne O'Mellis, the second lieutenant Wayne O'Mellis, he goes. He doesn't try to evade it.
Right.
And it's not an act of bravado, but it seems a very difficult act for him in some respects. You were there in 1969, was that correct?
I went there in October of '68,
Yeah.
left in October of '69.
Yeah, so you really, in the post-Tet Marine Corps.
Right.
Yeah, post-Martin Luther King, post-RFK.
All the
whole
cities
thing.
going up in smoke, yeah, it was after that. Yeah.
And one thing you do very well and very honestly is you do, without at all exaggerating them, severe as they are, you deal with the racial issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the white Southern Marine Corps versus the urban black draftee Marine
Yeah, that's
Corps.
right.
There's a character, China, who's pivotal, I think, in the book in his second-tier way.
Well, and he's Mellis's alter ego.
Yeah.
I mean, they are identically ambitious and identically good at it, and so I mean they're like half brothers.
Was that tough? Not just getting the black idiom, which you certainly do serviceably, but also writing about those things after so long.
It was, you know, it was scary because I mean, who am I? I mean, I grew up in a state where city of Portland has African Americans, but I don't think there were any in my county, and so I was early drafts of the novel. Those black characters were pretty skimpily drawn because I was just afraid to go there, but after taking so long to get it published, I got older, and I think you get beat up by life enough so that you go like, you know, I can survive this, and if I get it wrong, but I couldn't do the novel. You can't do Vietnam without dealing with racism. I mean,
Yeah, indeed.
that's what was going on, and it would not have been a true book if I didn't go at it. And so I breathed a sigh of relief because I've had African Americans in my reading say, "No, it's okay, you did okay," but it was scary because I thought I could blow this. I could blow it.
Well, you know, in a book that's almost 600 pages of prose, there's a lot you can blow.
Yeah.
And I got to say that while I didn't join the military until 1976, so you know, I was in the Cold War, easygoing, relatively speaking, military. Nonetheless, I served with a lot of NCOs and officers who were Vietnam vets, and this book remarkably closely captures not only what they talked about, but what they were reluctant to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a book that feels true. And in addition to the characters, which are well balanced, the portrayal of the black soldiers and their dilemmas. And
Right.
they're certainly not monolithic. That's one of the great things about the book, one of the many great things. The blacks are as various as the white characters. I mean, this isn't like, you know, Uncle Tom's over here and
No.
the Stokely Carmichael's over there. They're complex, everybody in the book. Black,
I
white,
hope so, yeah.
indifferent, you know, they're wonderful characters, but all those wonderful characters, some of whom meet heartbreaking fates, are pushed through a really powerful narrative. I've got to tell you, when I first saw the title of the book, I think it was might have been the New York Times book review or the Washington Post, I thought, Matterhorn, well, what's this, about mountaineering?
That's right, yeah.
But I pushed on, I read the review, and the reviews have been so stunningly good that I had to buy the book. But then I felt the weight of this. I mean, this you could work out with this sucker. And I thought, wow, do I really have time to read this? And I sat down on a Saturday morning, which is unlike me to sit down on a Saturday morning, and started it, and I'd finished it by Sunday evening. It was just, it's a tremendous book. So you owe my wife reimbursement for a lost weekend there.
Okay.
But it's terrific. The story really pulls you through. I mean, this Lieutenant Mellis is just thrust into this operation, and none of his trainings really prepared him for it.
Yeah.
And he's thrust into combat, and not only are the battle scenes extraordinarily well done, you manage that to capture the confusion of combat without confusing the readers. Very, very tough.
It was a very tough artistic challenge. Combat is about boredom and anxiety and confusion. And how do you get that across without having a bored, confused reader who throws the book
There's
aside?
a trick.
And I mean, I rewrote chapter 1 probably 30 times because I kept going, wow, I mean, it was hard, but I wanted very much to have the reader experience be in someone else's skin. That's why I like fiction. You can get into some character, and then you can actually see the world through that character's eyes, and it changes your view of the world. And so that was a big motivation for why I wrote fiction about that.